This episode of Device Talks Weekly Podcast is brought to you by Device Talks Tuesdays. Join us this Tuesday when we'll have leaders from Quasar telling you how to find the best ROI opportunities in the China market. Check it out. We'll talk about China later in the podcast, but you should also sign up for this upcoming Device Talks Tuesdays. Go to devicetalks.com. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. This is episode number 47. Wow, we've got Geoff Martha back. He is our closing keynote. So thrilled to have him back on the podcast. And we have Duke Rohlen. Duke is a superstar CEO who's doing some great work with KKR. This is a power-packed episode. I don't want to keep you from it, but I have two requests. Number one, find me on LinkedIn. I've got a survey there. I'm just asking folks how they feel about attending conferences in the second half of the year. Just find me. Please connect if you'd like to. I think you can still fill out the poll if you don't, but just a simple 4-choice poll. Boom, you'll be done. One question, 4 choices. Pick one and move on. My next ask is less an ask and more just a bit of a note for you. Later on, we're going to be talking about our R&D 100 awards. You can find out more information at rd100conference.com. We'll have that in the show notes as well. Now, without any further delay, it's my pleasure to bring in my co-host, Chris Newmarker, the executive editor of Life Sciences. Chris Newmarker, welcome, sir.
Good to be here.
It's a lovely day. Chris, I have some easy math for you, or actually I already did the math for you. You don't have to worry about it.
Wow.
I was going through getting ready for a presentation, going through our podcast plays, and we have well over 50,000 plays for this podcast.
Right.
Yeah, woohoo! Which is great. I mean, we're had 46 episodes. Do the math yourself, but we are doing extremely well with our more recent episodes. They continue to grow and grow and grow. So from the bottom of my little medtech heart, I'd like to thank all of our listeners out there for pushing that play button.
Yep. Thanks for listening. I'm glad. I'm glad we're obviously, I think we're providing some useful information for people. So that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's why we are here, and we're going to continue to kind of roll out some different ways to bring you the news. So we are always innovating here at Device Talk /Mass Device. So.
But I'm not going to do a sandwich board, Tom. No sandwich boards.
You're in Minnesota. You're in MedTech Central. You just have to walk through the area. Maybe we'll put you in Rochester. You can walk around the Mayo Clinic. Yeah.
With a sandwich board.
You love the Mayo Clinic.
Oh, they might kick me out. If I'm walking around their campus, though, with a sandwich board, I don't know. Maybe around their campus, the whole Discovery District, I could walk around there. There we go.
When the COVID lifts, we will. You and I will take a tour. We will stand outside the headquarters of all the major med techs in Minnesota.
Sounds great.
Both of us in sandwich boards, just saying thank you with big hearts on signs. How's that sound?
Oh, that sounds great. We could do a whole video. It'll be a blast.
Stay tuned, folks, for the Chris and Tom tour.
That's right.
All right. You have a hell of a top 5 Newmarker's newsmakers list, Chris. Let's kick it off. What is number 5?
Well, number 5 on the list, we've got PAVmed spinning off its subsidiary Lucid Diagnostics. They intend to do the spinoff. If favorable market conditions hold. They not sure. Maybe it'll be an initial public offering. Maybe it'll be a business combination with a healthcare special purpose acquisition company, and we actually have another top 5 about SPACs. So these are becoming quite the trend right now in medtech and the markets in general. But
I was thinking actually SPAC about the Zimmer Nuco. I wonder if that would be a possible SPAC target, but their revenue seems to be about $1 billion for that Nuco, according to what I've read. So that would be a lot of SPAC. I guess that's probably not a good SPAC candidate.
Does anybody have $500 million just sitting around that they want to spend on a spine company?
Maybe Apple. Apple has lots of money.
There you go.
All right, we're starting a rumor now.
Right.
Apple's going to buy Nuco. Pass it on, Chris.
Next thing you know, there's going to be some people on Reddit who are going to start
jack it up.
Bye. All right.
All right, let's go to number 4 on the Newmarkers Newsmakers list.
Oh, number 4 is we've got Abiomed CEO Michael Minogue is going to be the new chair of Abiomed, and Moog is taking over for Kevin Stryker CEO Kevin Lobo. Just a really important post in our industry. Kind of makes whatever executive is holding it becomes kind of a voice for the industry as a whole. So it'll be a really actually quite an honor actually for him to take that post.
Absolutely. No, and he's Abiomed's a fascinating company. It's local to me actually. Danvers is not about 20 minutes from my house, and he is a veteran. He's an Army Ranger. He served in the Gulf War and went to West Point. And I think one of the things was stated that he wanted to make bringing veterans into the industry a priority. So I think that's very, very cool.
That's great.
And,
very cool.
And he also, I read, had been the head of Advamed Excel, the early stage entity, and now that is being led by Todd Pope, who was on the podcast.
Yeah,
just recently. So keeping it in the Device Talks family, but would love to get Michael Minogue on the podcast. Michael, if you're listening, please reach out, and I'll continue to reach out to your company, and we'll have you on the podcast. So
yeah, very cool.
Well, now it's time for our opening keynote conversation. Very happy to have Duke Rohlen back. Duke is working with the private equity firm KKR on developing new ways of funding innovative companies. We'll review his great success in this conversation. But first, a word from PSN Labs. In this episode of the 2-Minute Detox, I spoke with Matthew Heidecker, Vice President at PSN Labs, your full-service engineering partner. Matt, interesting article on CNN recently about synthetic chemicals called phthalates and how they're damaging children's brain development. It leads to question about medical devices. Is there a concern that medical devices and the materials they're made of might also add to this problem?
That's an excellent question. And the answer to that is yes. For the past 5 or so years, we've worked extensively on this problem in identifying the presence of phthalates and other chemicals, particularly with relation to the European medical device regulations that are coming out. We're locating the presence of these chemicals and offering remediation solutions for our customers because from a toxicological perspective, from a biocompatibility perspective, as the regulation within the medical device industry continues to change, as we learn more and more about the toxicology, which is a part of what PSN does, we find that solutions are more difficult because these types of chemicals are there to provide the medical devices some performance benefit. So taking those chemicals out alters the behavior of the materials, and you have to account for that in some way, shape, or form, which is part of our business.
And how do you go about ensuring that phthalates won't be a problem for medical device makers?
We conduct a lot of testing in the realm of extractables and leachables and ISO 10993 to support the regulation for medical devices. With our business structure being an engineering services group, a processing lab, and a test lab, which includes a tooling shop, we have the ability to build unique test setups that allow us to challenge devices in the ways in which they're designed to be used in a clinical setting. We have the ability to engineer a solution, machine componentry to match the device, how it's actually deployed in the field. And then we conduct testing based on our biocompatibility subject matter experts and our toxicologists, who allows us to select the test matrix that's most appropriate. One of the primary tests that we do for phthalates is ISO 10993, which is extractables and leachables testing in medical devices. And through these tests, we're able to identify with some of the best levels of detection within the industry whether or not these chemicals are actually present. And if they are, we offer the ability to help our customers choose new materials to reduce their risk. And doing all of this in one facility is a benefit to our customers because they have a one-stop shop for everything that they're looking for with medical device development.
Thanks, Matthew. For more information, go to psnlabs.com. Well, Duke Rohlen, welcome to the podcast.
Tom, it's good to see you again. Glad to be here.
We talked last year during the dark clouds of the first wave of COVID, talked about how that was impacting your work at AJAX, and wanted to follow up first to see how things have changed in that front, but also wanted to talk about some new efforts you're doing with KKR and talk a bit about private equity in medtech. But first, very quickly, your first entrepreneurial experience. We've had a conversation earlier for another effort. I know your first entrepreneurial effort was a restaurant, and you went to law school, and then you found your way to medtech. Walk us through quickly your path to medtech. How did you find your way here?
So I'm not your typical, worked at Guidant for 10 years and became a CEO type of guy. I did go to Stanford, and then I did go and start a restaurant company, primarily because I didn't want to go back to law school. And we grew that to about 10 restaurants in California. It was as cool a thing as you could do in your 20s, and very, very hard work. Sort of taught me everything about entrepreneurship, about raising capital, about leading, managing people, recruiting good people, and also taught me that I wanted to go into a business that had better gross margins than the restaurant business. So I went back to Harvard Business School and focused entirely on another people business, which is the medtech space, but with obviously very different profile. Instead of serving food, you're serving technology to people. But a lot of the same capabilities that are required in running companies, whether it's restaurants or medtech, were things that I had experienced in the restaurant business. We're able to parlay them into medtech. So then I joined a company called Fox Hollow. It was sort of off to the races. Ultimately, became the president of that company. We sold that, and then I've had a series of other companies that I've started and sold, CV Ingenuity, and then Spirux, then ACT, which became Epix. And along the way, we formed AJAX, and then, as we'll talk about a little bit later on the talk here, Zeus. So.
Let's talk about your relationship with KKR, because KKR has been a player in many of those companies, if I'm correct. I mean, they were an investor in Spirux and CV Ingenuity and Epix. How did you come to work with KKR?
It's actually really interesting. So the relationship goes a long ways back to George Roberts, Henry Kravis, and my grandfather, actually. So my grandfather ran a company out of the Midwest called Crane Packing, which was one of the first take a company private LBOs that KKR did. And so Henry and George didn't know that I was related to Carl Rohlen, who was my grandfather, until, they decided to invest in, this time it was Spirux. And I went into the investment committee meeting to present to them and told them that I was the grandson of their first LBO. And it was sort of a small world. So even though that wasn't the catalyst to work with KKR, my feeling is that private equity represents a lot of optionality for medtech companies, given the scale of the investment size and the scope in terms of opportunities that they bring. And what I mean by scope is, yes, you can arbitrage a company, you can go sell it, or you could use a private equity engine to buy a company that, with a growth driver like the companies that I've fortunately been involved with, allows us to commercialize independent of having to sell to one of the large incumbents. So the private equity guys bring an enormous amount of, like I said, scale and scope to an investment, which gives you maximum optionality. So I've always felt that getting that optionality helps drive returns. KKR saw a similar approach, and they decided to back us a bit. So it's a long-standing relationship now with me personally, not including my grandfather. It's a standing relationship for about 5 years, and they've been just a delight to work with.
I just want to drill down. What optionality? You mean just having options in people who will acquire a company? What do you mean by optionality?
So there's like 3 phases of really, really challenging development for a medtech company. One is coming up with a really cool technology, right? And there are people that are really smart that I'm fortunate to work with that come up with really cool, interesting technologies that we decide to fund. The second phase is execution. And I've worked with incredible people on the execution front. People at all of the companies. Philippe Marco, who is an extraordinary talent, worked with me at both at CV Ingenuity and at Epics. So the execution phase is really important. And then you get to this point where, what do? You've got a cool technology. It's got regulatory approval. And that's where optionality becomes really important. Historically, especially before the last 12 months when the medtech IPO market is lit on fire, the real only liquidity was to sell to one of the large players. And there's been significant contraction in the number of players because of the acquisitions that the big players have made, Abbott buying St. Jude, et cetera. So not only was the value creation piece tied to selling it to one of the large strategics, the number of strategics was actually reduced as well. So it just became incredibly difficult for even really cool medtech investments that sometimes take 70, 80, $100 million to get to the point where they could transact, to have the leverage that they could use to get the return that they would need for the investment. So the asset class became a little bit anemic, right? The venture groups decided not to invest in medtech. Everybody thought of it as a bad word relative to biotech, health tech, et cetera. So what optionality gives you, right? What having a big checkbook or a big partner like KKR does is it says, hey, listen, we can go shop this deal to an Abbott or to a Boston or to a Medtronic. But if they don't want to pay for it, and there's a lot of reasons outside of just, value pressure, if for some reason it doesn't fit within what they're doing, you're sort of stuck unless you have a creative option generating engine like a private equity group that can say, okay, let's go do one of three things. If we can't sell it, let's think about aggregating companies to get critical mass so that you aren't a single product company, you could take it public. That's one option. Two is you say, okay, we're a growth driver. Are there companies out there that need growth? And we're going to buy that company and combine these two assets, right? And, we did that a little bit with Spyrox. We sold our company to Intellis. We could very well have bought Intellis, and you put those two things together. 3 months later, it was sold to Stryker because the profile of that asset changed from low growth to high growth. Or the third thing is you do both. You aggregate assets and you buy a chassis and you put all those things together and either run it as a private company or take it public. So having, the ability to access $500, $600, $700, $800 million gave you optionality that allowed for us to be really discerning about what liquidity endpoint we needed to take.
Is private equity paying a price that's competitive to larger strategics or being acquired by a larger strategic? Or are you really stepping in when these companies have no other option and this is their path and you're able to, the price reflects that?
I think it's hard for, if I were in the shoes of a large strategic, right? And they're incredible engines in terms of commercializing and incredibly good at quality, at regulatory, at clinical. But they're buying innovation to the greatest extent possible, not unlike what you see in the biotech space where they're buying smaller companies. The problem is, or the challenge is that unlike biotech, where an investment can translate to $1 billion in revenue if a compound gets approved, in medtech, the costs are similar in terms of development. It can take $100, $200 million to develop a product, but the markets aren't as big. And so the ability and the willingness of the incumbents, the large strategics, to pay, the price that will reflect a return on equity for the backers of the smaller company isn't there. And so until the IPO market happened, you needed that optionality to be able to spend $100 million developing something and then be able to create it into $1 billion company, right? Now with the IPO market, it's even more challenging because what's happening is the strategics are looking at this and saying, okay, we don't want to pay more than $300 or $400 or $500 million for a company, but the public markets for a company like that are supporting $1 billion to $1.5 billion market cap. So they're still needing technologies. The strategics are still needing technologies. They're still a great conduit to commercialize them, but you have to figure out how you can create value associated with them. So we're not competing. We're not trying to compete. We're trying to give ourselves optionality if for one of 100 reasons a strategic doesn't want to acquire it and or want to acquire it at a price that makes sense for our investors.
I want to get back into KKR and AJAX, but I would love your take just briefly on, you mentioned the IPO market's open. We're seeing the SPAC thing is certainly hit medtech with a few companies, Butterfly Network being one we've talked about in the podcast a lot, and Scott Hunnigan's just announced he'll be looking for some companies to acquire through another. What is your take on the SPACs? Is it certainly provides optionality, provides another alternative. Is it going to mess with the foundations of pricing in M&A? Does it have any larger impact on medtech, or are these just sort of one-off things that will come and go with the rise and fall of the market?
Yeah, no, I think I think they're here to stay. I think that it's going to be the third leg. You have IPO, you have structured deals, and then you have SPACs that are going to be liquidity engines or liquidity opportunities for not just medtech, but across the board. I think that the fundamentals of a company still need to support a public entity. And so there is a lot of money right now chasing companies that might not be wanting to go public, but historically, or couldn't have gone public historically, but now could. So I think they're here to stay. I think that what SPACs do is, in my opinion, they transition a company from needing to do a crossover round before they go public to being the crossover round. So you can come in and you can find a company that maybe needs to go public a year from now, and you're going to do a crossover round. Now that company can be SPAC'd and get to the public market sooner.
Interesting.
I also think that the visibility, right? So when you go public, you have to write an S1 and you have to communicate it. I think it's the S3 that you have to write for the SPAC. You're able to talk about what's going to happen in the future in a different way than you're able to talk about what's going to happen when you're going public. So you're able to bet a little bit longer term and understand a vision of a CEO and a founding team, maybe a little bit more deeply than you would be able to understand it from what you get from an S1. And so I think all of those things are really good. So then the question is, are there companies out there that could be SPAC'd? And if you're a company, do you want to be SPAC'd or do you want to go public? Ideally, the right players that could be SPAC'd are also companies that could go public. The difference being that they might be a little bit earlier than a public market. One of my friends was telling me in the tech space that, there's 1,000 unicorns, right? There's over 1,000 unicorns in the tech space. And so there's a huge demand and opportunity for SPACs to come in and take those companies public. That surpasses the amount of money or the amount of SPACs that have been created. So I think SPACs are here to stay. I think they're really healthy. I think they are allowing companies to get public earlier. It allows for some of that optionality that historically, before the IPO window opened up, was just tied to arbitrage. Now you have public market opportunities through, a direct listing, or you could go public, or you could SPAC. So I think it's really healthy for our space.
Well, let's talk a bit about the effort you have going with KKR with this AJAX. I'd love an update on that. And then in last fall or early winter, I guess, you announced the launch of Zeus, and I'd like to understand what your plans are there. Let's start with AJAX first. That is still an ongoing concern with KKR, even though you've sold a number of companies that were sort of AJAX projects, correct?
That's right. So AJAX has several investors. It's got Polaris. It's led by HealthQuest. It's got BlackRock.
Okay.
So there's a big capital source there, and we raised sleeves of $100 million, right? So we have 4 sleeves, so $400 million under management, basically. What we do is we have the ability with AJAX to invest $100 million sleeve in one company, or $10 million checks in 10 companies, right? But what we really are trying to do is find opportunities where there's an operational capability that could be benefited by some of the operational experience that we have. We're not looking to run those companies. We're not looking to take them over. We're looking to take all of the war wounds that are all over our body from having done this for 20 years and help entrepreneurs avoid some of those pitfalls and therefore get more streamlined vector to value creation. So that's what AJAX represented, and it's doing well. We have like 13 companies right now that are in 3 therapeutic areas, some services, some electrophysiology, and some interventional oncology. All really cool spaces, really cool entrepreneurs.
All of those have drawn from those $400 million, from that $400 million?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And then, again, the idea in this world is sometimes it takes more money and you want additional capital without having to syndicate. So we created Zeus, which is another entity with KKR. We funded it with $100 million. And Zeus complements AJAX in the following ways. One, it co-invests alongside AJAX in opportunities that are de novo. 2, Zeus has come in when we want to, when we need more money, instead of having to go to an outside venture firm and get a third-party mark to validate it. We're able to do that internally so that we keep alignment with our investors when critical decisions like should we sell or should we not, should we go public or should we not go public? There's complete alignment between AJAX and Zeus. And then the third thing is we've been able to tap into the private equity side of KKR, which gives us the ability to look at taking down a big company if and when we need to, because market dynamics dictate, or there's not an ability to sell a company to a larger strategic. We can create that large strategic entity. So Zeus creates an incredible flexibility based on just the size and scale of KKR.
So $100 million, I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot. It doesn't sound like you're going to be able to acquire a lot of companies to consolidate or invest in many companies with that. Why am I wrong on that?
You're not. $100 million in today's day and age is not very much money, but they have their last fund was like $24 billion, right? So we have the ability to go into that ecosystem, which is backing us. And if we need to buy a company that's doing $100 million in revenue and $10 million of EBITDA for $500 million, we just tap the private equity arm of KKR. If we need to scale up to make a $200 million investment from Zeus, boom, we do it. So $100 million is basically a starting point that allows us to scale very, very significantly if and when we find the opportunities to do so, and if and when we need to do so.
A final question. I'm not looking to add another paragraph to the obituaries of venture capitalists, but what is the state of medtech VCs in that? Who is funding? What kind of entities are funding the companies that you'll be investing in through these vehicles? And is there enough of that going on?
So I think, the venture guys are really smart guys, right? And they've seen a lot, they've done a lot. I think they're having to do a couple things. They're having to think bigger, right? So they're having to write bigger checks. The idea of writing a $5 million or $10 million seed check and reserving $10 million for downstream, it doesn't exist anymore because it costs so much money and it takes so much time for these technologies to get to the point where they're valuable. So I think that the venture guys are adapting to be more like growth guys, but they're also able to do early stage investing. The challenge that I see with venture is just based on the experience that I've had, which is a company is best suited when it's going after the ultimate value vector as opposed to chasing its next funding. Mm-hmm. And the traditional venture model is let's raise $5 million and get to milestone 1, and then we'll go out and raise money at a higher value and get to milestone 2, and we'll do that until we create value. I think it's very distracting for management teams to live that way. It's very uncomfortable for a CEO to have to worry about capital. My whole approach is you go in and you capitalize a company. You say, okay, here's the budget to get to value creation. What is value creation and what does that look like and how much money is it going to cost to get there? And then you fund it, right? And you figure out what works for the CEO in terms of equity, you figure out what works for the investors in terms of ownership, and you figure out what we need for the management team. And that's all decided up front. And then you basically say, let's go and let's drive this really tight. And, instead of zigging to meet the milestone that we need to raise the next, Series B, all we're doing is tightening our belts to get all the way to that end value. That's how I run it. That's a little bit at odds with how the venture world runs it. But I think there's probably room for both. I just think it's more like we need to take, as an asset class, we need to take 8-year timelines and condense them down to 5. And so everything that we can do to make that happen is going to be beneficial to entrepreneurs as well as to the asset class, which is medtech.
How do you then... I'm laughing because I'm kind of reminded of how the boomers raised us versus how we may be raising our kids, where we have always had to earn a lot more than, we really had to earn everything we got when we were kids. And that was part of the venture. We're like, look, we'll give you enough money to get to this point, and then if you do a good job doing that, we'll give you more. I mean, that sort of invited innovation and cost savings and workarounds. Do you still get all of that if you sort of alleviate or eliminate that, a little bit of that funding stress? How do you ensure that these companies are still innovative?
Yeah, I mean, funding stress and focus don't have to be aligned to get productivity. Okay. Yeah. Funding stress is a nightmare. Like I've lived it so many times, right? How am I going to raise the next money? An example was when we did CVI, I had to raise money in 2009 for a PMA product that ultimately would cost $100 million when the market had collapsed and I was trying to raise a seed of $2 million, right? It was sort of pathetic. But so I have been on that. What I try and do is make sure that we are operationally tight and that the capital that's required is dished out. It's raised, it's committed, it's there. But we're not putting $40 million into an organization. It's milestone driven, because the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that, after 2 million, you've got proof of concept and this is going to work. After 10 million, you're ready for the clinic. And then, a big spend is on the clinical trials. But you don't want to burn $40 million on day one. You want to know it's there. You want to know it's committed, but you want to drive the organization really hard to make sure that they earn the right for the next tranche, which is coming from that capital source that's already identified and solidified up front. So you keep the stress on, you keep the tension on yourself as well, right? So you don't get fat, dumb, and happy, but you definitely make sure that the capital's there for the ultimate drive to the end zone.
The CEOs get a little more sleep, so I'm sure they're more productive.
They stress out in other ways. They're still up all night anyway.
Excellent. Duke, thanks for the time today. It's always great talking to you.
Hey, Tom. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, pal.
All right, Chris, let's roll into number 3. We already hinted at it a little bit.
Well, number 3, we've got the former Verb Surgical CEO. He has a SPAC. It's called Vita Flash Acquisitions. It's somebody else who's been on our podcast as well. It's Scott Hennekens, and it's they're planning a $175 million IPO, and then after they get the IPO done, they'll go shopping for a cool medical device company to acquire and take public through the acquisition. But these things are proliferating in general right now, but we're definitely seeing a lot of it in medtech. You've got the former iRhythm COO Kareem Cardi. They just closed on a $250 million IPO for SPAC last December. We've got former Medtronic CEO Omar Ishrak on $862.5 million IPO for SPAC earlier this month. So we're just seeing these proliferating. It seems like a really interesting way to take a young medical device company public and perhaps avoid some of all the hoops you have to jump through to do a traditional IPO.
Certainly a lot easier for the company, and it'll be interesting to see what the impact is. Actually, today I spoke with both guests, Duke Rohlen. He is backed by the private equity group KKR in 2 efforts, and also Geoff Martha talked about SPACs and the impact that they have on M&A for strategics. If you've got someone like the Butterfly Network, we've mentioned them here a few times, being purchased for over $1 billion. That trickles down to valuations for all companies in medtech. So you might see, he talks about Medtronic moving earlier stage because the later stage deals are getting very pricey. So it's going to be another interesting trend to watch.
Yep, exactly. Number 2 on the list, we've got BD and Scanwell Health collaborating on a smartphone-enabled home COVID-19 rapid test. And Scanwell is a developer of a smartphone-enabled at-home medical test. It's going to offer its mobile app to pair with a BD's antigen test for the virus that causes COVID-19. And so it just should be hopefully another cool way to just get like some quick home test done for COVID-19. Anyway, we can like boost the testing.
Excellent, great news. All right, and let us bring it home. Number 1 on the Newmarkers Newsmakers list.
And number 1 on the list is we have Transenterix changing its name to Ascensus Surgical. And basically, the name is that they took a and put it ahead of the word sensus, SENSUS. That's Latin for cognition, and it's supposed to kind of like represent like this idea that they're ascending, elevating robotics surgery. Transenterix now, Ascensus Surgical has been doing a lot of pioneering work when it comes to packaging artificial intelligence with robotic surgery, and they're actually kind of saying that they're transitioning from being just a robotics company to being what they're calling a digital surgery company. So fun name.
That seems to be the buzzword, and bringing it back to the podcast, that's because it's all I ever talk about.
But the big thing I'm wondering, Tom, is, we get these names off of Latin and sometimes Greek. When is somebody going to do a company name off of Klingon? That
would be difficult to pronounce, and it would also be a bit of the antithesis to medical, right? Klingons, I don't think they would really honor a medical professional. Oh yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm not so deep in Star Trek I can remember the name of a Klingon weapon, but there's something might be involved with a weapon, like Batleth would be one. Yes, Batleth. Yeah, sorry. There we go. Not that I'm a nerd or anything, but all right. Well, I'll nix my Klingon idea. Going back to this part of the Alpha Quadrant, we will have Anthony Fernando, CEO, on the podcast. I hope next week, if not then, the week after. Very cool. Excellent. And I see here we've got the top editor for Design World here, Paul Haney. Paul, good to see you, man.
Long-time listener, first-time caller, as they say.
So, Paul, what are you here for?
This is your life, Chris Newmarker.
Apparently.
Yeah. You ruined my shtick. I was going to have a whole "This Is Your Life," Chris Newmarker. Do you recognize this voice, Paul? What was young Chris Newmarker like when he joined WTWH Media 3 years ago?
Oh my gosh, he was so quiet. He hardly ever said anything. He was, quite the wallflower. I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, and look at him now.
Yeah, he's blossomed into this amazing industry leader, right?
I try. I kind of remember. I think when I joined, I shaved all the time. The shaving's gone down.
I think that was before COVID, though, and I don't remember very much of life before COVID. It's all a blur.
Yeah, it's like 100 years ago.
We talked about Blur's Day last week on the podcast, so we've already covered that. But you have an interesting program underway, Paul. We brought you on to talk about the R&D award. So tell us a bit about First of all, tell our listeners about what you do at Design World and about Design World, and then let's get into the R&D.
Well, so Design World is a horizontal design engineering magazine for OEM design engineers, kind of across the mechanical and electrical engineering spectrum. But then I'm also in charge of R&D World magazine, formerly just R&D. And that's kind of what I'm really here to talk about today. And R&D World goes out to, lab scientists, engineers, lab managers, and professionals in the research and development side of things. And we run the R&D 100 Awards, which is really the only science and technology awards competition that recognizes new commercial products and technologies and materials that are of significance that we think they're going to change the world. And this program goes all the way back to 1963. So we're very proud of it. It's been called the Oscars of Innovation. There's a couple of other names out there that people go back and forth with.
So it probably gave an award to the computer, I bet, right?
I think we did. In fact, I did. The former editor just sent me some old issues, and he sent me one from 2007 where they used to have the Scientist of the Year, and they actually had Anthony Fauci was the Scientist of the Year, and so he was on the cover.
Nice.
So I took a picture. I got to tweet it out. I keep forgetting. But yeah, the R&D 100 Awards. It's kind of a cool thing in that one of the things I like about it is either you win it or you don't. It's not a rank thing. So you don't know if you were number 7 or number 81. You're just in or you're out. We obviously get way more than 100 submissions every year from all over the world, from Singapore and Finland and Thailand and Taiwan and Brazil. And so it's kind of cool to see all the things that come in. We have a number of different categories, including like analytical and test, software, mechanical, electrical, process. And then we also have special recognition awards that we do. So those are corporate social responsibility, green tech, market disruptors for products, market disruptors for services. And then this year, we've got a brand new one called Battling COVID-19. So we're really excited to see what kind of submissions that we get for that. But
I think we have a few companies that have done that, right, Chris? Here in the Device Talks world.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few medical device companies like trying to tackle this for sure.
So if any of your listeners are interested in learning more, they can follow on Twitter. RD100 Awards is our Twitter account. They can go to rdworldonline.com, which is our main website, and there's information there. Or they're welcome to contact me directly if they have any questions.
This is really just like anything that's like super innovative that have come out of their R&D departments, right?
Exactly. And then we also have an R&D 100 podcast, if I can kind of promote that too. And that's a thing where we come out once a month and we just focus on one past R&D 100 winner and kind of talk about, how that innovation happened, what was the genesis of the idea, does that company have any kind of a secret sauce as far as how they innovate. And it's been really interesting so far. And I co-host that with Amy Kalanauskas, who I know you both know well.
Yeah. Amy's great. So that's awesome. Is there any really neat trends you're noticing in the submissions this year?
We just opened up for submissions a few weeks ago. So I don't think we have any yet, but like most of these programs, they always come in, the last few weeks, they come in like crazy.
Yeah.
It is, I will say, it's not an easy 1 hour kind of thing to just, I'm going to get online and enter it, just because you have to collect a number of different things as far as, what the questionnaire asks you for. So it's a little bit of an intensive process. So it's not something people usually do on a whim. So they know it's coming, but our deadline this year is May 7th. We do have a late deadline of May 31st, but there's an extra fee on that. So let's just focus on the May 7th. And usually in the weeks leading up to that, we'll get a slew of them. But I expect, there will be a lot of COVID related things.
Yeah, for sure.
So it'll be interesting to see, and maybe I can come back on in a few months and we can talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
great.
we will include a link on the show notes, so folks can just find an easy way to get all of this information. So sounds like a great effort, and it's great to acknowledge the research and development folks there. And I will say that the Design World team, actually, they are not just dumb writers like me and smart writers like Chris, but they're actually know what they're talking about. They're engineers.
Yeah, we're actually engineers. Yep. and you never know with COVID world, but in normal years we have an amazing black tie awards dinner for the R&D 100 that again goes back decades and decades. We had one in 2019. Obviously, we couldn't in 2020. The dinner's usually in November, so we haven't made any decisions yet, obviously, but we're holding out hope that maybe in 2021, by the time November comes around, the world hopefully might be a different enough place that we could actually host that dinner. But again, we're not going to make that decision for several months yet.
So Paul, I'm wondering, do you own a tux for the event, or do you
I
rent?
Actually rented.
Wow, you rent. Okay. But I mean, if we get these going, you might be worth it to buy.
Well, see, that's what I told our CEO. I'm like, at some point, I should just buy one of these because we don't have to pay to rent it every year. So,
well, if you need a couple of red carpet reporters, Chris Newmarker and I are available. We'll be out front greeting the nominees as they walk in.
I get interviewed every year by Taiwanese TV, sends a couple stations over. So every year my kids are always amazed that I get these links where I'm being interviewed on the news in Taiwan. So
you're an international celebrity.
Awesome. Well,
I'm a celebrity somewhere, if not here.
Well, it's a great program. We'll definitely have you on for reminders, and we'll track the progress. Hopefully we'll have some medtech winners in there for sure.
All right, gents. Hey, it was nice seeing your faces and hearing your voices.
Yeah, great having you on, man.
Same, Paul. Thank you. Now I'm thrilled to introduce our closing keynote conversation. Hard to do much better than Geoff Martha from Medtronic. Thrilled that he agreed to sit down once again and review Medtronic's quarterly report, but also give us an update on the reorganization, also many of its innovative products, its new product launches. And we talked a bit about SPACs and other current events and some interesting news from China. So we'll hear from Geoff Martha right after this word from Finnegan. In this episode of the 2-Minute Detox, we're going to hear from Jacob Schroeder. He's a partner at Finnegan, the IP experts, and he's going to talk to you about the power of a quality patent. Let's listen.
Building on our PETA's piece from last podcast, I will now discuss an issue known as the divided infringement problem. The key takeaway on this issue for our audience is that you and your patent attorneys should be deliberate in drafting your claims to cover the actions of a single actor. This issue arises in the context of method claims, and the law holds that to infringe a method claim in a patent, every step of the method must be performed by a single person. And to illustrate this point, consider this very simple example of a claim. A method of using a medical device to treat a patient comprising coupling the proximal end of the medical device to a computer, inserting the distal end of the medical device into an orifice of the patient, operating the medical device to achieve a medical objective. In this trivial claim, we have 3 steps: coupling, inserting, and operating. Yet in reality, this claim may not ever be infringed because separate people may perform each step and no single person performs the entire method. For example, perhaps an engineer couples the device to a computer during manufacture, whereas the physician is the one who inserts the device and operates it. Thus, no single person performs each step because no single person performs both the coupling step and the inserting and operating steps, meaning there's no infringement. When you draft your claims, keep in mind whose conduct you are attempting to capture with your claims, and keep your method claims confined to capturing the conduct of only a single actor. Of the over 10 million patents issued in the history of the United States, only a small percentage of these have ever been subject of a lawsuit, and fewer still have made it all the way to a jury verdict. That's why measuring the value of your company simply by the number of patents it has obtained makes about as much sense as measuring the value of your company based on the number of people it has employed over the company's history. Both metrics show that a lot of money had been spent, but if you're relying on patents to protect your company's R&D, work closely with your law firm to carefully craft your claims with a focus on quality rather than quantity. As a patent trial lawyer, I'd take one well-drafted patent over 1,000 weak patents any day.
Thanks, Jacob. For more information, go to Finnegan.com. Well, Geoff Martha, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here, Tom.
So you had a great earnings report today, or good earnings report today. Wanted to go over the some of the details from that, but also kind of get an update on the reorg and that your folks are undergoing. I think you announced that it was done. At least that was my understanding. But let's first get into the business. You had indicated that February was stronger than January, and I think you anticipate March will be stronger than February. So we're moving in the right direction. Give us an overall sense of Medtronic's performance.
Sure. Well, look, we're really pleased with our fiscal Q3 performance. Especially in the backdrop of the recent COVID surge. I mean, we're making progress sequentially quarter over quarter in terms of getting back to closer to more normal levels of revenue growth as well as profitability. Launched a number of products that are having an impact, and we're taking share. And continue to advance the pipeline, for the products that haven't launched yet. Some of these are blockbuster potential here with like the surgical robot and Ardian. So it was a good quarter for us, and hopefully a good quarter in a series of quarters here. We're just consistently executing like this. In terms of the the overall market backdrop, we said that we believe March will be better than February, April better than March. Quite frankly, we haven't seen so for us. This second wave or this latest wave of COVID, it really didn't start to impact elective cases from our perspective, where our recovery didn't slow down and actually turn down a bit until late December. So later than maybe some of our competitors. I think part of that is because of so many new products out there that masked it a little bit. And then it went into January. and into February. And we really thought we'd see by now a turn. Now, we're very optimistic that's going to happen. We think it's delayed a week or so because of the weather that we've had in the United States. But, we are, in talking to hospital CEOs, they're very bullish in terms of the, snapback they anticipate in elective procedures. And like we talked about on our earnings call, we're seeing our capital equipment, which is, as you know, Tom, is tied to procedures, whether it be energy consoles for energy surgical products, energy consoles for surgical products, or it be imaging or navigation equipment for our neurosurgery procedures, or actually our robots. This type of stuff is selling at record numbers. Each one of them is either at a record or near record number. In our stealth station, navigation has been out there for years, and so we believe this is a leading indicator of what's to come with the bounce back or snapback, I'll call it, in procedures in the United States. And we think Europe will lag by a few months actually, but we'll experience something similar.
Have you, for the larger capital items, have you had to introduce any new financing to assist the hospitals in their purchasing, or are they able to manage that still on their own?
We haven't introduced new financing. Just anything. We've been offering more and more financing over time because capital equipment's become a bigger part of our business. At the beginning, it just wasn't a big need, but now that capital's become a bigger part, we've gotten more sophisticated in our customer financing options. But that isn't so. It's a part of that is a result of COVID. It is actually, now that I think about it, back a couple of months ago, particularly with our Mazor robot, we didn't want to slow the adoption of that because it's such an important component of our strategy and a leading indicator, I think, of our spine business. And so we did a couple of months ago introduce some new financing options. That's helped. And I've seen some of our competitors or even, people in capital equipment that we don't compete with are using more financing as well, from what we can tell. But I that's helped. But I really think the bigger message here is hospitals gearing up for procedures.
And you mentioned that new products might have masked the slowdown a bit. Why would that be? Honestly, I'm not sure, because you're allowing for new procedures to be done. What's the connection between a new product?
Well, I think it's taking share. Yeah. So we're taking share. I mean, and so we're getting growth in excess of the market, and I think that's what I mean by that.
Okay, great. So let's talk a bit about the new products. You talked about that you had 46 approvals last quarter, and you've had 220 since last June.
January.
I
wish last January. June. That'd be even better.
It began with a J. Let me read my own notes. January. Yeah. So talk a bit about some of the ones that really have stood out and have been adopted quickly.
Sure. Well, I mean, the indication expansion for our micro leadless pacemaker, the AV indication, indication expansion, and that has been a huge standout. I mean, it's been growing, like last quarter, it grew 75% in the United States, 64% globally. And the quarter before that, it was even higher growth. And so that's been a real standout. And it's really redefining the pacemaker market with all its, the fact that it's leadless and can be inserted with a catheter versus a procedure. So that's a big one. And then our various neuromodulation franchises, we've been investing in we invented neuromodulation 20 some years ago. And then, maybe 5+ years ago, we had fallen, more than 5 or about 7 years ago, we'd fallen behind and started losing share there. And we made a lot of investments over the last few years in our neuromodulation platforms. And, those products are coming to market. So one is our deep brain stimulation, our Percept deep brain modulation system for Parkinson's that has brain sensing in it. So you can actually listen. The way I like to say it is we're now having a two-way conversation with the brain. Before in DBS and our competitors, you're just kind of screaming at the brain with energy, modulating it to mitigate the symptoms. Now we can listen back to how the brain is responding to that, and then gives us the ability to personalize the therapy. So our Percept system is the only one out there that has the ability to sense. And then we got more products coming. Our directional leads, we call them Sensite leads, are coming in a couple of months. And so we really believe this is starting a multi-year, I think, market expansion and market share for DBS for Medtronic. And then on pain, we did an acquisition, our pain stim, SCS, the spinal cord stimulation. We did an acquisition a couple of months ago called Stimgenics and launched this new waveform on top of our existing pain stim device called Intellis, which is, got the best battery life, the smallest, et cetera. And then you add this algorithm to it, this new stim pattern. We've got great 12-month data, and that is leading to some share gain there. despite a replacement headwind that we've got. And then we announced at NANS in January that we're coming out with ECAPs, evoke compound action potential. And that is generating some excitement. So we're seeing a lot of momentum in pain. And then finally, pelvic health. This is neuromodulation or sacral nerve for overactive bladder. That business, that market is starting to become a pretty decent sized market. I don't know, it's $1 billion or so. Our revenues, over 700 million or so. And so that's growing double digits now. And we got a new competitor there, an Axonics, and, some of the new products that they've introduced and focus they've put on the markets help expand the market. But we've launched a new rechargeable system there, and I think we talked about our earnings commentary, like 8 or so plus points of share that we've taken back in the last couple of months. Mm-hmm. So those are all standouts for us that are out on the market, and then I have to highlight our surgical business. Legacy Covidien surgery business had a really good quarter, and that's important for us because that's one of our big franchises.
Is that one of the franchises that really generates the cash and helps fund the innovation you spoke about earlier?
Yeah. So for us, we've got our 3 biggest businesses: our cardiac rhythm business, so pacing, ICDs. That's one. Our surgery business from Legacy Covidien, and our spine business, including the capital equipment that goes with it. Those 3 generate a lot of the cash flow for the company. And then you've got your like high flyers, like neurovascular, mm-hmm. that's big and growing fast, stroke. And then, our structural heart, like TAVR, and that's also big and growing fast. You got your high flyers, but a lot of our cash flow comes from those other 3 big businesses. And what's good about things right now for Medtronic is all 3 of those are growing at or above the market, and are all in the markets are doing fine in all of those. And we have a really strong pipeline. So when one of those 3 starts to lag, it really hurts. It puts pressure on the company, and we feel good about where we are now and where we're the road ahead for all 3 of those businesses.
And those businesses are going to get some competition as well. We've talked to the podcast last couple of weeks, Corza Medical, and I don't know if you want to get into the details, but they're going into surgical, and Zimmer spun out their spine group. I don't know what that's going to become, but the competition is certainly out there.
Yeah, it is. And I do feel low in spine. I know that a little bit better than the others because I used to run that division. I'm still learning the others a bit. I do feel like, there used to be in spine, and there still is hundreds of competitors, but you're starting to see the market consolidate now, right? Because not everybody can afford. It's more than just about a screw and a rod and some new thread on a screw. And it's way beyond that. Now you're talking about intraoperative imaging, navigation, robotics. We just bought a company called Medtronic out of France that's mm-hmm. data and AI that's allowing for surgical planning and personalized implants. I mean, so the game has gotten much more technical, which it needed to in spine. It needs to, because the outcomes in spine are too variable and you're too reliant on, physician skill. And you're not going to train enough physicians around the world to democratize good spine surgery. So you need this technology. And so it's good for patients, and it's good for Medtronic because we've been investing in this. And as the industry consolidates, we're going to be a winner. And and that's really, that enabling technology has really taken our spine business from losing share, even shrinking a few years ago. Now it's to growing mid-single digits and depending on the quarter, holding or gaining share.
Are there any products out there that are needing a longer runway than you thought initially that maybe aren't getting the traction that you anticipated?
Yeah, I'd say one, and not for the reasons you might suspect, is our diabetes new pump 780G, which is launched in Europe but not in the US, and mm-hmm. it's gaining great traction in Europe. The problem is it's not in the United States yet. It's our new closed loop system, and what it does is a couple of things. First, it's got new algorithms on it. It's and it's the time and range for these insulin dependent diabetics is it's like we've not seen before. And then it eliminates a lot of the hassle factor of our existing system, alerts and alarms that go off, and keeps you in auto mode a lot longer. And so the feedback we're getting from patients and physicians has been phenomenal in Europe. And I just actually talking to investors, some of these are longer investors in Medtronic, that know medtech, do their own market research, and just talking to them over the last few days around earnings, their own surveys are validating what we're hearing, which is always good. And it's getting great traction. The problem is it's delayed getting into the US. The approvals and this is public knowledge, the approvals for diabetes products at the FDA is backlogged because that same division is focused on COVID diagnostics. And so, I mean, I understand that. When I say I'm frustrated, I'm not frustrated at the FDA. I'm frustrated at the situation. And the FDA has been very good about communicating this. It just doesn't mean I just don't like the answer.
Let's talk about the pipeline coming up. We can give a bit of an overview, but I'd love specifically to hear more about renal denervation, which is are you calling the product OnMed, or is that the name of the trial?
That's the name of the trial. This is in terms of what we call the product. That's something interesting, and even the procedure. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The OnMed is a trial.
Okay. No, that's fine. So let's talk about that first. So where are we with renal denervation? I mean, I think you're talking about maybe going to the FDA later this year.
Right. So, well, first of all, it's got breakthrough designation. Assuming this, was it MCIT, that ruling stays, it survives the new administration here, the Biden administration, which we think it will, we automatically get 4 years of reimbursement upon FDA approval. And what we're waiting for to go to the FDA is this OnMed trial, which is the last piece of our pivotal clinical evidence generation, which we anticipate those results will present themselves this year. It's a Bayesian trial, which means it's variable when you've reached your endpoint, and so we expect to hear this year and present at TCT in the fall. And we're, based on all the work, this is decades of work, and over $1 billion has gone into this. We're very excited and optimistic about what renal denervation can do for patients. And
talk a bit about the effort you're working on with Half Moon, the MitraClip, the Foundry project.
Yeah, sure. This one's an interesting one. I mean, the whole model, right? If I take a step back, just to kind of talk about Medtronic strategy here, the thing that above all else, you've heard, we'll talk about the new operating model and all that, but really what we're trying to do here, the leadership team of Medtronic, is put more resources to work in terms of R&D. And we're doing it in traditional ways through putting it into organic R&D. We're doing a series of tuck-in, acquisitions, which we can talk about. We've done like 8 over the course of the last year or so. We're leveraging third-party money from like Blackstone to come in and augment. And then we're looking at partnerships like the Foundry here and to extend our R&D. And in this case, this is a situation where the Foundry, as invented the MitraClip and has really great capabilities. And we decided, we didn't tell them what to do. We said, this is the end result that we'd like. And can you figure out how to achieve that? And in the mitral repair area, and they came out with an interesting design, and we provided the funding for this company, which we call Half Moon. And there's pre-negotiated purchase, agreement here. And so, and they've come out with we think a very innovative device that basically, the way it's been explained to me, and I've seen it, I thought it was good, is you got these leaflets and we basically put that aren't really touching, and you get the leakage there. And we put a backboard on one of the leaflets that enable it to close. And, it's a lot more sophisticated than that. But my depth doesn't go too much deeper than that.
It works for me.
And, we've done a few cases. The first case I'm a little bit more aware of. I think we've done 2 or 3 more since. And it totally eliminated, it was easy to insert according to the physicians, and it completely eliminated the MR, the mitral valve regurgitation. So we're excited about this. And obviously in that structural heart space is, people go back and forth on what's the biggest growth opportunity in healthcare and medtech. Is it structural heart related, mitral and bicuspid? Is it surgical robotics? Is it renal denervation? I don't know, but it's a big growth area. Yeah. And we've got organic and inorganic shots on goal here. And the partnership with the Foundry has been really good so far, and we're excited about this Half Moon venture.
No, the Foundry is a great group, and they coincidentally also developed Ardian, which is your renal denervation project now.
Right.
It's interesting though. You mentioned Blackstone, you mentioned the effort with the Foundry. These are both almost kind of pharma-like models where you're bringing in private equity money to fund ongoing business, or partnering with startup efforts really early on at the concept stage. You usually didn't see that very often on medtech. Is this something you're looking to replicate either with a private equity firm or find some other incubator effort out there?
It is. It is. I mean, look, I first of all, what strength of Medtronic, I think that it is our technology capabilities and platforms. I think our clinical, or we're really good at clinical science. And then I think we're good at, taking these devices, therapies, products, and then globalizing and making them a standard of care, so the commercial side of this. And I have a lot of faith in our technology team. And so we're trying to give them as much resources as possible to work their magic. And our batting average is very high. And so that even third-party money, right? Third-party money is using like the Blackstone type of deals. It's all our people, all our ideas, all our IP. Mm-hmm. Something like the Foundry, we are using not just, in that case, we're using our money off our balance sheet. In the case of the Foundry, we're using there's new IP generated, but we contributed IP. And then we do contribute people, that go there on a sequestered, basis. But they contribute a lot of people. They generate new ideas and new IP as well. So it's not just our technical capabilities in clinical, it's theirs as well. And so that is a little bit of a different model. Probably will do that less than I think the Blackstone type of deals, bringing in third-party money, because we do have a lot of ideas. Mm-hmm. And there's not as many people out there that I believe that can do it as well as we can do it internally.
Excellent. And final new product I wanted to talk about, Hugo. People are interested in getting an update on the robot.
Look, we are excited about this. It's been a long road, and mm-hmm. It's been a lot longer than certainly we wanted, and to get it done. It's the most complicated project I think we've taken on. Certainly, legacy Covidien, and even at Medtronic, there's a lot of moving parts here. Building a robot from scratch and a lot of different technical components. The testing and the validation and verification work that we've been doing over the last couple of months has really gone well, especially the past 2 or 3 months. And so we're on schedule to, which we've been signaling to investors for a while, to file for the CE mark, as well as file for our US IDE here at the end of the calendar quarter here, so March, and hopefully have our first surgery and our first sale sooner than later. The first surgery would be obviously in a jurisdiction that doesn't have the regulatory requirements for approval. Mm-hmm. But we hold ourselves to a pretty high standard here before we do a surgery. But the animal work's gone well, and like I said, the training with surgeons has gone well, and we're really. I'm personally starting to shift my focus to the commercialization of it now.
Why was it important to develop it internally as opposed to acquire? Was there just nothing attractive out there to acquire
on the robot?
Well,
yeah, this decision goes way back before me or even Medtronic. This started way back. I can't remember the exact date, but it's 10 years or so.
Okay.
Where Covidien made this decision. I mean, it makes sense because look, they're a big franchise at the time, and now our biggest business is that surgery business.
Yep.
And without a robot, I think you're going to be marginalized in surgery over time. So many of these surgical procedures are moving to robotics. Physicians are partnering with companies that bring them the best technology, whether it be laparoscopic. There's still a lot of runway in laparoscopic. I mean, around the world. I mean, the growth in laparoscopic in terms of dollars is going to be more than the growth in robotics, I think, for a while. But the growth rates in robotics is going to be higher. So Covidien made the decision to do this organically, and it started out. I don't know if you heard this story before. They bought some IP and technology and some people from the basically Germany's version of NASA. I think it's called BRP. I can't remember the exact acronym, but it's Germany's NASA. And we still have a facility in Germany, real close to one of their NASA. I can't remember DLP. I can't remember the acronym, and I went to visit it once. It's really cool, and it's great technology. So that's how it all got started. I wouldn't call that inorganic because it was so early.
Yeah.
And by the time Medtronic got involved, this project was well on its way. And it's been delayed, like I said, a couple of years later than we originally thought. But still, I think the end product is going to be worth the wait.
Excellent. No, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard that. Well, let's move. That's a great segue to M&A. A year ago, you said we'll be doing more tuck-ins. Today, you talked about a lot of the tuck-ins you did. You can highlight a few of the larger acquisitions if you'd like, but I'm more interested in knowing what does 2021 look like in terms of M&A for you. Are you going to be doing acquiring?
Yeah, we're still still on the hunt for these tuck-ins. I mean, that's our focus, right? And tuck-ins are, by definition, first of all, they're around our existing markets that we're in, our existing therapies or products. So, surgery, spine, various areas of cardiology. So it's the areas that we're in. They tend to be early stage, right? So many cases, not commercial or just going commercial. They tend to be technology or clinically oriented. And then they're really an extension in my mind of our organic growth strategy. And we're going to continue to look for these. And I think they do need to be earlier stage. I mean, because a couple of reasons. One, as these early stage companies, as they start to get closer to maybe an IPO and start to get their sights set on that, the valuations, the capital markets are white hot, and as you know, for these type of products, and the valuations get tough once they get to an IPO. And now you've got SPACs out there as well.
I almost wanted to ask you about SPACs. I'm like, no, it's too far afield.
Yeah. So you got SPACs out there as well that are looking for deals, and they're looking for deals that are closer to that IPO time frame. So I think for us, it works better to do them a little. I'm not saying we're not going to do later stage deals. I mean, we'd still do those. But I think the more the frequency will be which is what we've done over the last year. These 8 deals are all, tuck-ins, relatively early stage, some earlier than others.
So are the SPACs really impacting the price of jacking up the price for M&A for later stage properties?
Not, I haven't seen it for us yet. All right. We haven't a deal that we were circling around. But if you look at some other medtech, acquisitions like this Butterfly ultrasound company, I'm not an expert on Butterfly and that ultrasound technology, but it went for, over $1 billion. It was well over $1 billion. And, based on what I know about the company, it was, that's a high valuation. Yeah. And so, I mean, I could see that translating into our space. I don't know why it wouldn't. So
good point.
It could be, but, we're going to turn around and we could partner with some SPACs. I mean, I'm not anti-SPAC. I mean, I think we can partner with some SPACs and use those to our advantage.
That's a good idea.
But it's just a reality.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know you got to go. I want to wrap up with an update on the reorg. What is the status? Is it complete?
Oh no, it's not. I wouldn't say it's complete, but what let me be specific. We went live with it February 1st, and that's like the structural piece of it, right? So the decentralization into our business, or what we're calling now operating units. The 20 operating units, decentralizing into them, consolidating a lot of our decision-making into those operating units. We took out over 2 layers of the company, not quite 3, but over 2, which helps with our agility and things like that. So that is done, okay, and been announced, and everybody knows, and the dust is still settling on that. But there's still, this operating model is much broader than structural. Think of that as kind of going from mainframe to PC, right?
Okay.
But we still have software issues, right? We got to rewrite the software. And so we are launching, we're still working on our new operating mechanisms. That's our standard meetings, our quarterly business reviews, trying to streamline those, streamline some of our core processes, including our product development process. So we got to streamline the processes. We're putting new incentives out there, which we started last year. We're going to continue into this year. Last time I talked, we talked about market share, putting market share more into our annual bonus plan. We've already put it into our annual goals and objectives. We're now shifting to put that in our bonus plan. We needed a couple of quarters to learn how to measure market share more accurately, because in a lot of the markets you're triangulating, right? We like big some of our larger competitors, like a Boston Scientific or a Stryker, may have these products that are kind of buried in their P&L. And it's hard for us to tease out exactly how much. So we're getting better at doing that, and so putting market share into our incentives. And then finally, our culture, our new cultural norms, which work alongside our mission. Medtronic, we're a very mission-driven company, not changing the mission at all. But the mission was written 60 years ago. The competitive landscape was very different. The world wasn't, medtech wasn't global. There weren't all these focused startup competitors that are well-funded, that are nibbling at us from all angles. So it didn't really address some of the competitive nature and the speed at which things were happening. So our new culture gets at, a more competitive mindset. That's where the market share measure helps us with. Comes at being more agile and doing things faster without though cutting corners on quality at all or integrity. And so adding that and getting that ingrained into the company, that's going to, all these other, this software, I call it, is going to take a little bit of time, but there's a lot of enthusiasm about it. And I'd say some of the early signs that we're seeing that are tangible is on the market share piece. I mean, we focused on that first, and we are seeing it show up in our results where we're, gaining share and in more areas across the business.
I noticed you highlighted that in the presentation. One thing I want to just ask about the reorg and just sort of personnel. Chris and I were talking at the podcast last week about we're seeing Medtronic people take senior positions in other companies, including a CEO position.
Yeah.
And how do you look at that when you're going through this reorg? There must be an expectation that some people are going to find other opportunities, not just during a reorg at any time. How do you look at that as the CEO? Do you factor in those changes? Do you have backup plans in place already? But how do you approach that attrition issue?
Yeah, I think there's two things I'd address that. One, on a reorg like this, anytime you kind of shift, some of the decision making, if you will, in a company from one area to another, you're going to create some disruption, and you're going to have people that you don't necessarily want to leave that are going to leave. And we had some of that, not a ton, but we had some of that. But it was within our expectations for sure. But then beyond any kind of reorg, when you got our 20 operating units, and I want to be known as not just, I want Medtronic to be known as not just a mission-driven company and a technology company, but a talent factory. Okay. And there's pros and cons that come with that, right? The pros are you're attracting people, you built these development programs and this culture of developing people. It's going to help your company for sure. Okay. One of the, kind of the side effects of that though, is you're going to have other companies poaching your people. Yeah. And I remember when I was growing up in GE, back in the good days of GE, we won't talk about that now, but they were known for their training programs, and they were a management factory. And one of the training programs I went, which is the oldest one, it's their financial management program, which was considered the most successful management training program in business. It was entry-level program. It had over 50% attrition, meaning that once you graduated that program, less than 50% of people stayed with GE for, 10 years or more. And a lot of them would go to, other companies because they were so sought after. So, and it was still a really great return for GE on the investment. Now, I don't want anywhere near that kind of turnover from our executive team, but you get the point. The point is we want to invest in people. There will be turnover because we're going to be a talent factory, but we're also going to be attracting better talent on the front end. And it's just something we're going to have to, if you want to be a talent factory, that's one of the things you got to contend with.
Yeah, Bill Belichick being filling coaching slots across the league.
Oh, come on, you're killing me. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I don't want to hear about Bill Belichick.
I withdraw the statement.
That's okay, but it is a good analogy. Except I'd like to think I don't wear hoodies. I smile a lot more than him too.
You're a lot more personable than he is, at least from here. One final thing I want to just follow up on. It was kind of news to me. There's an issue. It was brought up during the analyst questions, and I think you brought up during the presentation. But just the China tenders and the pricing pressure on drug-eluting stents. Can you sort of bring me up to speed on that? And you seem to convey that hopefully that Medtronic had some sort of advantage in sort of contending with this.
Well, look, anytime you take a pricing hit of that magnitude, and it's a very significant pricing hit, in China. Okay, it's been contained to China, and this isn't new to the coronary stent world. There's big major pricing differences all around the world, but this was a big one with China.
How big was it?
It was in the 90%.
Wow.
Range, yeah. And so that hurts. But what we got in return, as we were one of the 5 winners of this national tender, is dramatically increased volume. And the Chinese government actually called us and said, "Are you ready for this? And you're prepared for this kind of volume?" And the other thing strategically, what's happening now is because of the lower price, so many of these other more rural cities in China, tier 2, tier 3 cities that weren't participating in coronary stents before are now, these hospitals are now participating in this. So we're now, that's allowing us to expand our sales force out of the tier 1 cities into these, not out, but keeping them in the tier 1, but adding salespeople with all this new volume into these lower tier cities. And even though the margin is not quite the same on stents, this will be the highway, if you will, that we launch our newer products that are differentiated. We don't think we're going to be hit by these type of tenders. Things like we talked about earlier, renal denervation, things like some of their other products. So TAVR, that was the other one. So they go to that same physician group. So our transcatheter valves, which are going to be coming in China soon, as well as renal denervation. So it allows us to expand our sales force and get ready for that. Even though I would rather not take the pricing hit, but that is one of the ways that we're contending with it, and overall been able to manage it. But it is for the next couple of quarters. It's a headwind for us.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your addressing that, and I appreciate you for taking a few minutes today to talk to us. I know it's a busy day. Thanks for joining us, Geoff.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Always have fun with it.
All right. Well, that was a great program. Always great to hear from Geoff Martha, and thank you, Duke Rohlen, for joining us as well. Chris Newmarker, now is a time when we plead for social connection because we're so darn COVID lonely. How can folks find you on social media?
Yeah, if you want to connect, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at Chris Newmarker, just like a new marker, and I'm on Twitter at Newmarker.
Absolutely. And I am on LinkedIn as well. Tom Salemi. I am on Twitter at MedTech Tom. I'm on Clubhouse at MedTech Tom. Actually, Paul Heaney and his team held a Clubhouse room meeting today, which I thought was well. They're going to do some more. It went well, so we'll try to get something up there. Maybe Chris and I will be up there to chat with you folks. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure Chris as well, and he'll express it himself, but we're really grateful to everyone who has listened. We would very much be grateful if you would share this podcast, tell others about this podcast. We really would like to grow this into something even more awesome. And we're trying to find new ways to make compelling content for you. So the more people who listen, the better.
Yeah, exactly. Just very grateful that we have this audience excited about what we're doing, and we're just gonna keep on going and do even more cool things.
Fantastic. Well said. Well, that's a wrap, folks. Once again, please subscribe to this podcast. We're on every major podcast platform, Amazon, Google, Apple, you name it. You can find us. If you subscribe, you'll get this delivered to you almost immediately after I push the publish button. So you'll be one of the first to hear the great insights in medtech that we try to deliver to you every single week. But once again, that's a wrap. Tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks weekly podcast waiting for you.
See you soon.